Hi there, how are you? My name is Ezequiel. I'm a front-end heavy full-stack developer that works doing React apps every day. And in this case, I'm bringing you this video because I want to practice my English speaking and pronunciation, and I want to improve my teaching skills. But as well, I want you to learn about authentication and authorization process done with JSON Web Token. But I want this video to be different. In what way? Well, there are a lot of videos about this same topic on the web. They even are for React and Express applications. So this is one of the many videos? No, because today we will learn how to do it right. One way of doing it. Because you may know, after searching a lot, of course, that there are many ways of doing the same thing. There are many places we can store our session data, and we as developers don't need all that information. We don't need that many ways. We need one that works, that it's secure, and that can be handled in the long term. So this is why I bring to you this video. We will be talking about CORS, about CSRF, XXS, security concerns that you may have when building this type of processes. So let's dive right into it. We will be using a React application that I already built and an Express server that I already have to test out some features. So to get started, this is not a beginner tutorial. I mean, if you are here watching this video, I will assume that you already know something about JSON Web Token. You know something about what cookies are, how do they work, where are they stored, and of course, how to build a React application and an Express server. A basic one. We don't need a big application to test this, but how to use React and how to use Express with Node.js, of course. So if you have a basic understanding of these three topics, then you are good to go. We can continue to this video. Otherwise, I will recommend you to first look these topics and then come back. It will be really useful for you. Okay, we need a starting point. You know, like math, when you are developing a theory, you should start from somewhere. Well, we will start from these three axioms of our JSON Web Token process. The first one, that it's an assumption I need you to make and I need you to respect, okay, is that the secret key we use to generate our JSON Web Tokens must stay secret. That's the point. It works like a country economy. If you have the machine that prints money, then money is worth nothing, because if anyone can make money, then what's the value of a bill, for example? Well, here happens exactly the same. If anyone can generate tokens that are authorized for my application, because the secret key is the one that gives the permission, then how can I distinguish my token, the one that I authentically generated, with the key that you or someone else or a hacker generated? So we can't let the secret key be public. We can upload the secret key to our GitHub repositories. We have to protect it. Okay, that's our first axiom. Concerning our second axiom is that cookies should be correctly configured. That means we will use cookies to store the refresh token. We will be talking about it in a bit. And as you may know, cookies have a lot of properties that we can configure to say, okay, it will be HTTP only, it will be secure, it will be same site or not. So we will be talking about how to correctly configure all of them to get a solid cookie and not a wasteful one. And finally, we should know that CORS is mandatory. It may have happened to you, it happened to me a lot of times, that we don't like CORS. CORS is a problem constantly in our applications. Well, we need CORS, alright? Cross-origin resource sharing is a mandatory tool that we need to use to connect two applications that live in two separate domains. You know, we will have our React application, our frontend living in Netlify, for example, and we will have our Express backend living on Railway, Render, Vercel, any other hosting service, okay? So to connect two points that don't live in the same place, we must use CORS. Otherwise, it breaks. It won't work. It will give us those red alerts that we see all the time when we are just starting connecting front end and back end. Okay, so we need CORS. And we need CORS to be set to allow some particular origins, okay? This is cross origin. We cannot allow any origin as we do with most of our apps. We must allow only the ones that we want to connect to from our frontend. That is localhost when we are developing, and the domain we are connecting from when our application goes into production. So we can't open our backend service to anyone, but we need to establish which points, which domains can connect to our application. So if we get the idea around these three axioms, we will be perfectly fine to continue with how we do this process of authentication and authorization, okay? But this is key. If you have some doubt about what I'm explaining here, then I would recommend you to go out and look about that doubt for yourself and then come back. This is our starting point, and this is something we should all agree on, okay? So let's continue with our process. Let's suppose that you make a login request from the React app, okay? That's a post login. This request comes along with a username and a password. We will say that it's a valid username and password. The Express server validates that information, that the password is correct, that the user is active, and returns a status 200, okay, to the React application. But when it returns the 200, it returns with two things that are important in our session, that it's the session information itself, okay? So the first thing that brings this 200, it's in the body, the access token. We will need to make a distinction between the access token and the refresh token. We will discuss about it in a bit, okay? So in the body, we bring the access token. That will be a common JSON Web Token with the user information. Always remember that the user information is public in this case. You can extract a token, come to the JSON Web Token site, paste it here, and you can see here the payload. It's important that we only include information that it's not like a password, it's not confidential, okay? It's a public information about our user that if leaked, then nothing else would happen, okay? It's information that goes in each request. So let's start from there. So you have the access token that goes with the body, but we also have another token that it's called the refresh token, okay, that goes in the headers. And why does it go in the headers? Well, there's a header called setCookie that a backend service can send us to the frontend. This header that it's called setCookie will, okay, set a cookie in our frontend application with the key, as the name it comes here, in this case refresh underscore token, equals and the value, okay? That's another JSON Web Token. But what's the difference then between an access token and a refresh token? So an access token is used to access the data. We will make a lot of requests using the access token, okay? After we have logged in, that it's we have authenticated ourselves, we will need to authorize each of the requests we make from our frontend to the backend to access that data of the user, of anything, okay? So the access token is the one that travels in each request, authorizing that request. But the access token has to have a limit, a time limit, because otherwise we will open a session and that session will keep on living until someone burns that computer, okay? So we need to set an expiry date to this access token. By expiry date, I mean, I don't know, 1 hour, hour and a half, as that is a lot. But we will determine based on our application and our configurations how much time does this token has to live, okay? And the refresh token, on the other hand, has more duration than the access token, because when the access token gets revoked because of the expiry, okay, the refresh token is not revoked yet for some period of time. I mean, for example, if our access token will live for 1 hour, okay, the refresh token can live up to 1 hour and a half. Just to give some numbers, okay? It could be any other relation, any other duration. So the refresh token will leave 30 more extra minutes than the access token. In this case, it can be any amount of time, okay? So these 30 minutes will allow us that if we make another request, then that as access token doesn't work, okay? That access token has been revoked, so it won't work. Then it appears the refresh token. Why? Let's come back here to this chart. We will do another request, but let's suppose that this request, let's suppose that it's a GET request and we are getting, I don't know, slash users. We are getting a list of users, okay? We will do a request and the access token that we are sending has expired. Let's suppose that more than an hour has passed between our last request and this request. So the access token has expired. The token travels with the request, but when it gets to the Express server, well, Express says, okay, this is not valid. You cannot make this request because if you're doing this request for me, for the server, it's like you're not logged in. That token doesn't work, so I cannot give you this information. So what our Express server will return to the React, the response, will be a 401, unauthorized. You're not authorized to request that resource, okay? Because your access token, your name, your key, your information that I generated for you, okay, it's not valid. When we get this 401, let me move this chart a bit so we don't get bothered by this one. Okay, I made the chart a little bit longer, otherwise it wouldn't fit here, okay? So we get that 401. When we get that 401, we know that the access token doesn't work anymore, okay? But during these 30 minutes that we have yet, let's say, we can make another request. This request will be a special request. It's a post request that goes, for example, to /refresh token, okay? Let's call it like that, the endpoint. And this post brings something that it's a cookie, okay? This post request gets into the information, the headers of the request, the cookie that we have stored before, or better said, that Express stored for us in our front-end headers, okay? When we made our login, the Express server sent us a header called setCookie that saved this refresh token inside of our React application, okay? Inside the web browser cookies, actually. So when we make this post refresh token, we send along this cookie, and this cookie is sent by setting credentials to true. Okay, when we make a fetch request, we set two parameters, the endpoint, okay, and an option argument. And inside that options, we should set credentials true. And by saying that we are sending the credentials, it will automatically set the cookie in the headers to be sent to the backend, okay? So in this post request, we are not sending anything in our body, but we are sending inside our headers the refresh token that has been stored in the cookies. Our Express server will check for this cookie, okay, that it's the refresh token, the same way it has checked with the access token. It has to have two properties. The first one, to be issued by it. I mean, it should have been created by our Express server and not by any other server, that it's using our secret key, the importance of keeping secret our secret key. That's the first point. And the second point is that the access token, or the token, in this case the refresh token, is still active, that it hasn't expired, okay? So after checking those two properties of our refresh token, that it has been issued by the server and it's active yet, then our backend will generate a new access token and a new refresh token that will be returned in a response to our front-end application. The same way we made with the login, okay? It will return a body with an access token, a new one, and a header with a set cookie with a new refresh token. So the duration, the life of both tokens will start again. we will have another access token for another hour and another refresh token for the next hour and a half. So this is a process that goes along all the time inside our applications, but we don't see them because they are automatically done, okay? When we use Facebook, when we use Instagram, when we use any application that has a backend, basically, we're doing this process a lot of times in the middle of the day, okay? The access token has a life expectancy of an hour, 2 hours, okay? But we don't see this whole communication because it's automatically, it's very, very quick and it's transparent to us, the users, okay? And after returning this new access token and this new set cookie, we can try again our original fetch request, okay? So we will try again, sorry, the box is not this far down, it breaks my whole chart. But if we suppose we are doing again this request, we will retry this request, but with the new access token that it's active. So with the new access token active, so our Express backend service will check for the two basic properties. Has the access token been issued by itself? Yes, it has. And is it active? Yes, it is. So then you can access this resource and I will send you the information you are asking in the body, like any other request and response flow ever. So having this understood, we can go to our application and see how this is working, okay? We will leave for a moment these charts, this whole theory we have been talking about, and we will go up to the real React and Express applications. So here I have the front-end application that I built previously. It's a really simple React app. You will see it even doesn't have any style applied. So we don't focus on the style. We don't focus on things that are trivial to this example, but to the request itself, okay? So I have this welcome screen, a login page with a username and a password input, okay? I won't tell you yet what my password is. When I log in, you will see a 200 response from our server. This request is the first request we make to our server and the most important one because it's the one in which we authenticate ourselves. So this login sends to our local host on port 3000, okay, API v1 auth/login, a post request, and you will see that payload goes with our username and password, just like that, plain strings, password, our password. And the preview is what the backend server answers us back, okay? So it brings us data and message login okay, it doesn't matter. But the data brings us this access token we were talking about. And this access token, we can copy its value and we can come to this JSON Web Token page, paste it here, and you will see that we can see its information. So it's really important that you pay attention on what you are sending in this token. Don't send any confidential information, please. So here we will see that we have a user object with an ID and a name, nothing really important. And then we have two other properties. One is called issued at, that says when the token was generated, and the other one is expires. Okay, when does it expire? And you can stand on each of the values and it will say you when was it generated in that tooltip. It was generated today at 16 o'clock and it will expire in an hour, okay? Exactly an hour. This access token, we need to store it in our front-end application, okay? But where? We will go with that in a second. But there's something we're not seeing yet in this response. We will go to the headers of the response. We will go to response headers and you will see that there's a header called setCookie that sends a refresh token and the value of the refresh token. I will copy the value of the refresh token. See that you should copy until the semicolon, not longer than that, and we will paste it here. So we will see the difference between the access token and the refresh token. The difference is the expiry date, that this refresh token expires after 2 hours of being issued in comparison to our access token that expires 1 hour after it has been generated, okay? So we have this set cookie. We could see it also in headers, payload, preview, response initiator, timing, and cookies. Here we can see the response cookies that came with our response. There's a name called refresh token. It has a value. It says where does it come from, what path, when does it expire, okay, which is the size, and we have these properties that are very important in our security concerns. The first one is HTTP only. By setting a cookie as HTTP only, that means that we cannot access the value of this cookie using JavaScript. We have no way from our React application of knowing if a refresh token was set or even knowing the value of this refresh token. We cannot get it. If we go to our console tab, we can say document.cookie. Here, it will bring us a string with all the cookies that are set in our page, in this site. And there's no cookie. You may say, okay, we set a cookie. There is a cookie. We can go to application and you will see under cookies tab that the refresh token is set. But why can't we see it from JavaScript? Why can't we get this cookie? Well, because the cookie was set as HTTP only. That means we cannot access it, we cannot alter it using JavaScript. Really important. The other attribute it has is that it's secure. It says to the browser, okay, you should send this cookie when you need it, but it can only be sent under HTTPS protocol. You know, when we're connecting to a page, we can connect through HTTP or HTTPS. HTTPS is the secure protocol for HTTP. So if our refresh token cookie has the secure attribute enabled, then this cookie will only travel through HTTPS channels, okay? And it won't do the same for some not HTTPS channel. That's also really important because when hackers want to get this information, they probably won't have an HTTPS server, but an HTTP server. So we are guaranteeing us some extra security here. And the last one that we are going to mention is the same site attribute. This allows us to connect two sites that are from different domains. In this specific case, I'm connecting a frontend and a backend that live in the same domain, localhost, okay? But when we go to production, we need this same site to be none because we will have our frontend in a server and our backend in another completely different server. So having this same site none allows us to connect these two services, okay? Now that this has been said, we can see we are logged in. We can request some resource, okay? And we can also log out. When we logged out, we made a request to the backend. Why? You may say, okay, logging out will be to erase the token. There's nothing else we should do. Yes, you're right. But we cannot delete our refresh token because, as we said, we cannot access the refresh token. So we need the server to delete it for us. So we made a post request to our logout endpoint, and the post request brings as a response a refresh token with an expiry of 1970. That is a long time ago, and as it has expired a long time ago, what the browser does is it erases the cookie. It's a really nice way to erase a cookie, bringing it from the backend as a very old date. Okay, we will see the code of this. In this request in the logout, we also send the request refresh token so that it can be replaced in the response. Okay, let's log in again. We're missing something. We have talked about the refresh token, but we are leaving aside the access token. What are we doing with the access token? As you may have seen, it's not being stored in the cookies section. Why? Because we have the refresh token here, and we need the access token to be accessible from our front-end application to be sent over a header called authorization inside our requests. So we need that token to be available for us, and we cannot save it, at least as an HTTP only, in our cookies. We may look in local storage. And yes, this is a token, but it's about something else. It's not our access token. And the session storage doesn't have anything at all. So we have our local storage and our session storage empty. I will log out and re-log in, so you see that it doesn't set the access token here, neither in the local storage, neither in session storage. Where are we storing this information? Well, there's a place you may have not thought about before, a variable. When you set a variable, for example, you can say here, let token equals something, and then you can make a console log of that token, and you will get that value. Well, this is when we define our variables directly under the console tab, or we use it as a global scope. But when we use React and when we use any other library or UI framework, we are storing these things not in the empty JavaScript script, okay? It's not out somewhere. It's stored inside a global state manager or a scoped variable that we cannot access from here. In my case, I built an application using a global state manager called Zustand. You may have heard of it, Zustand demo. It creates a store. It's similar to Redux, okay, but it's simpler. It's literally this. You create a store where you save some things, you have the properties and the methods that change that value. So I have this store that saves these global values, and we cannot access those, okay? If I try to access the access token, okay, I'm saving this information as access token variable. It won't give us anything because access token is not defined in this scope, but it is defined in our application. And this allows us to protect this token from being stole, okay? We will see inside our application where are we storing it and what problems it brings with it. So here I have my front-end application. It's the whole project, JSON Web Token tutorial. We have the client and the server open down here. But in the client section, it's really a very simple React app. It doesn't have anything fancy. We have this component that it's the login form. It's being called from app.tsx here. We will ignore this for a moment. And our login form, it's a simple form. It calls the onSubmit handler. And this handler submit receives the event, prevents default behavior, gets the value from the form, and calls this login method that comes from our store use session that it's been created using Zustand, okay? It's this global. It's a method created inside the use session store I built earlier, okay? We're sending through the username and a password. So we will go to this use session and we will see how is it working, okay? So we have the use session, it creates a store. It has these properties, which is a user. For starters, there's no user, that's null. If it's logged in or not, true or false. And what is the access token value? This is where we will be saving our access token, okay? So we have a logout method, we will come back to this, and we have this login method that receives the username and the password and tries a fetch, like all our life. So we have this JavaScript fetch that sends to the endpoint base URL /auth/login and this options object, okay? It's a post request. We will send the headers as content type application JSON to send the body, okay, with the JSON stringify. And see here these credentials include that I mentioned earlier. If we don't set the credentials to be the value include, then the app won't allow the backend to set a cookie, because the cookie is what we call a credential and needs to be included in the response. If we don't set this, it will be included, but the frontend won't allow it. The frontend will say, I wasn't expecting a cookie, so you shouldn't be able to store it in my application, okay, in my cookies storage. So it's truly important that we include these credentials flag here. Okay, we check for errors, and if everything went fine, we will do a rest.json and extract from our object the access token we were receiving, okay, this value. Here in preview, data access token. We will decode the payload, you know, get the access token, get the payload of the access token, and we will save these values. We will save the access token with the value it came from, the JSON Web Token itself. We will save it's logged in true to change this parameter, and we will change the user from null to the user that has been sent over the token information, the token payload, okay? That's the login process. It's really simple. We are just storing this information inside a global state manager that we can access throughout our application, but not throughout plain JavaScript as I tried here, okay? That's great. But this brings us a problem that you may have not thought of yet. If I refresh the page, what happens? Well, if I refresh the page, every value inside of our application that has been stored inside a variable, it's lost. When you recreate the page, every variable creates itself again with the starting value, okay, that it's null for the access token. So after the refresh of our page, we are losing that access token. The cookie stays, okay? The cookie here in application stays, it doesn't change. But our value inside our variable has changed and it doesn't have our access token anymore. So we need to make another request when we refresh the page or we detect that the access token is not there to ask for the server for another access token. So what happened when I refresh the page is that it says loading, and after a second it says hi John, and we're logged in. Okay, but we don't have the access token. How do we now have it? Well, there's this request. When the app loads for the first time, it will try to get a refresh token using the refresh token it has in its cookies. So it will make the whole refresh token process we talked about, this request, including the token, the refresh token, and it will return a new set cookie with a new refresh token, and inside of this response, we will also see the access token being sent over the channel. Okay, we will come here to the use session, and this is the method refresh token that it's being called when the app first renders. It will make a fetch to the base URL of refresh token. It will send a post, okay, and the credentials as include. If we don't put credentials include, this cookie won't be sent over to the backend. Okay, this refresh token won't be sent over, and it won't give us anything. Okay, let's see if I remove these credentials include, what happens. I will refresh the application, and the refresh token endpoint returns us a 401 because we are not authorized to get a new refresh token because we are not sending that token. You will see here in the request headers of this request that we're not sending any cookie over to the backend. If we include the credentials, I will refresh the page and you will see that in the request headers, we are sending a cookie header that takes this refresh token value to the backend. Okay, it's really important that we include these credentials include. Okay, we check for a 401 status, and if not, if everything went fine, then we get this new access token. We store this access token in our global state manager. We set the is logged in true, and we refresh the user information with this token. This is all handled in the app.tsx, our entry point after the main TNSX. I have commented out the React strict mode so you don't see two requests being done. Okay, the use session and the app TSX here. So the first thing that app does is destructure the is logged in and refresh token from the use session. I also created an is loading, so we could see this loading screen, nothing else. It's not really that important. And we have this use effect that will run on the first render, okay? So if the user is not logged in, that it's when the page gets loaded for the first time, because we're not logged in that first time, or when we refresh the page, we don't have the access token, so it's logged in starts as false, we will try to get a refresh token. Okay, this calls the method that calls the backend with the refresh token. If everything went fine, then is logged in will refresh its value, it will become true, and we will return the logged in view that's just saying hi, we get the user.name, and we make available this logout button, yes? But if it doesn't refresh this is logged in value in our store, then we will return the login form. That's the form of the non-logged in user. That's it. It's nothing else behind this architecture. And we are storing our access token in a safe variable and our refresh token in a safe cookie. It's really this simple. Here you may have seen that I hard-coded a delay of 1 second to set the is loading in false. In a real app, in a production app, we will be using another fetching utility like, I don't know, Tanstack Query, Redux Toolkit, that makes us easier to know when the request has been finished, if it has had any error, if it is still loading. But well, for this small example, I just made this out, like 1 second later, you set this loading to false and you show either logged in view or login form, okay? Nothing else. What's happening in the backend side of our application? Okay, we have a really simple SOAR Express backend. Really important that you use the .env file and you don't upload it to your GitHub repository, the first thing we talked about in our first axiom. So make sure you have this git ignore and you are including the .env along with the node modules, okay, so it doesn't get sent. And also include always a .env underscore sample or another name resembling it. That gives us the structure of the env that this service is expecting, okay? So I have this .env with a JSON Web Token secret key. Here is a randomly generated secret key. You should generate one by yourself, more secure than this probably. And the port in this case, that it's 3000. So in my source directory, I have my index where I set some console logs, I start the application, and here is the section that is really interesting about this application, okay? We set up a whitelist. So these are the domains from which the requests will be allowed to get it to the server. If a request comes from another server, another domain that it's not one of those indicated here, I just set up two, the local host and the production environment. But if you set more, it could be more, of course. But if it comes from another domain that it's not included here, then that request will cut off and the server won't respond, okay? So it's really important that we set here the whitelist. And then we set these course options. It has to have these credentials set to true to allow the sending of cookies through the channel, okay? And then we set the origin. You can copy and paste this section that it basically checks if the origin we are requesting this information from comes from any of these whitelist. Otherwise, it will send an error to the console, say it's not allowed by course, and which origin was trying to connect. Nothing else, okay? We set the app to use course, okay, with these course options, and we should say a cookie parser, okay? This is a dependency you should install in your application, in your backend service. Cookie parser, it will give us the cookie as an object and we won't have to divide it by ourselves, okay? So after using these middlewares, course and cookie parser, don't pay much attention to the other ones, okay? Morgan is for console logs, express.json to receive JSON, URL encode, etc. We will use the routes, that it's our main router. We have only auth routes in this project, so we will go to our auth router, and you will see that we have these endpoints here. We have free post, login, logout, and the refresh token, the ones that we have been seeing throughout the tutorial, okay, that come from our post controller, login, logout, and refresh token methods. So we will go to the login, and you will see that it's really simple. I just faked a user database here. I'm not using a real one, but this is the same if you were to connect to a real database, okay? So I have this John property that has this ID and password. Of course, you should store your hashed password and not the plain text password. So this post controller has the login method. We will destructure the username and password from the body. You should add here any validations middleware to make sure that you are getting the username and password. I'm omitting that step just for simplicity, okay? But here I said if there's no username or there's no password, we will return res.status http status but request, that it's a 400, okay? With a JSON saying data null and message username and password are required. And we return to avoid keeping on with the request. Then we will try to search the user in the database. I will use my own fake database, okay? And we will search for this username. And we validate the credentials, okay? We can have an incorrect username or we can have an incorrect password, okay? So if no user has been found or the user that has been found, the password is not the same as the password being sent over from the frontend, then we will return an unauthorized 401 response code with data null and message username or password incorrect. And we will return to stop there the request. If we get to this point, everything has been going well, the username and the password were correct, we have our user. So we need to generate the JSON Web Token. We say that everything is correct and we generate the JSON Web Token. We will remove the password from the user object. Okay, we won't be sending the password because we said that this information is public, so it shouldn't have any confidential information, so that it doesn't get sent to the front. We build this user info with a user property and the object we will be sending in the payload of this JSON Web Token. So I'm using a library called JSON Web Token, like that. There are a lot of libraries that do the same. And I generate two tokens, okay, with the same information, access token and refresh token. The information is exactly the same. I send both user info and JSON Web Token secret key. That this is retrieved from our .env file, but the difference between both is when it expires, okay? I set the first one to expire in 1 hour, the access token, and I set the second one to expire in 2 hours, so we get that hour range to update the access token. Finally, we will send the JSON Web Token to the front end. We have to send the cookie and we have to send the response. So we set the cookie with rest.cookie thanks to the cookie parser. We set the name of the cookie that will be refresh token. It can have any name, actually. We set the refresh token, and we send these properties that are the ones we talked about when we saw the request for the first time, okay? That it's the expiry date, when does it expire, if it will be HTTP only or not, what will be the same site value. You have none, you have lax, and you have strict, okay? And finally, if the cookie will be secure or not. We have the rest.json and we return the response. We will send the data as the access token and a message saying login OK. If anything has happened in the middle, we will send a 500 internal server error. And the logout works basically the same. We are sending in the response a clear cookie so that we eliminate this refresh token from the front-end cookies. This clear cookie sets the expiry date to 1970, so that's why we won't include here an expiry. And we send the same properties, HTTP only, same site and secure, the same ones as the first cookie when we set them. And we send as JSON that it's logout OK. Just to answer something to the front end, we could omit this step. We watch for any errors, okay, and the refresh token is the same as the login process. So we will get the refresh token from the cookies. You know, this is rec.cookies. We can access the cookies, and here we access the refresh token, okay? That's what I'm destructuring from the request. So if there's no refresh token, then we will show this no refresh token found, and we throw a new error. When we're throwing a new error, this try jumps to the catch block, and we will send a 401 to our front-end application, okay? That it's unauthorized. And we will clear the cookie if it is, okay? Because we can jump here to the catch block in any other point of the try block, okay? Not only in the first one. So we can have the refresh token, but something else can happen. So we will delete either way the refresh token if it exists or not. So assuming we have the refresh token, we need to verify if it is valid, okay? We need to know that the refresh token was issued by us and that it's valid still. It hasn't expired. So we use the JSON Web Token .verify to verify the refresh token with the JSON Web Token secret key. Okay, that's the key that we say, okay, this is our token or was someone else's token. We get the user info, we generate a new JSON Web Token, the same access token and new refresh token with the same information. We could update this, we could go to our database and bring in updated information, but this is really a simple example. So we just get the information from the token and send it again over the new tokens, okay, with the same properties, 1 hour and 2 hour expiry. So we send the cookie the same as before, and we send the rest.json the same as before, but here with a refresh OK. That's the whole process of authentication and authorization. It's really not that difficult. We are here providing a lot of answers to so many things we see on the internet. We see that people don't use access token or refresh token, they have only one token. That's really annoying for the user. And I will leave the homework to you to search why is that annoying. Assuming the access token is not infinite, okay? We have to set a token, if we set one token, we have to set a token with some expires date. And it can be, I don't know, 3 months, 1 year. We have to set it to some date, okay? But assuming that the access token has some expiry date and it's not far, far away in our future, you should know that it's really annoying because it will keep on logging out our user when they are trying to use the application. By using a refresh token, we are relogging it to our application without them knowing, okay? So we avoid this work of going to the login page each hour, for example, in our case, okay? We relog in the user by our means, not by the user means. The user shouldn't log in again and again and again and again each hour, okay? It's really annoying, it's really pitful. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. It was a whole new experience for me. So I will be seeing you in another video, maybe talking about some other things that here we haven't talked of, like, let's say, XSS or CSRF, that are really, really important topics that we should be covering in the near future, okay? So I will see you in the next video and we will talk about these two security concerns that happens to every one of us. I hope you have a nice day. See you.